So, Vladimir, great seeing you here on the podcast. Very looking forward in hearing all your knowledge you have to share about account-based marketing, about funnels, about how marketing is evolving. And before we start with the conversation, maybe start introducing yourself for the audience.
Vlad Blagojevic. I'm a co-founder of FullFunnel.io. We are a B2B marketing consulting company helping, let's say, B2B marketing, B2B tech companies with high annual contract value, 5+ figure contract value on the annual level. Usually these are, I would say, 30, 40 to 400K deal sizes on a yearly basis. When you have long and complex sales cycles, when you have multiple buyers and all of these nice things that you know from enterprise sales, but how does that map to marketing? And this is what we do. We help companies implement account-based marketing and demand generation to land opportunities with target accounts. Usually 20% plus of their target accounts end up with an opportunity, but it isn't a short win. It isn't like it is, let's say, a more strategic approach.
Yeah, brilliant. And you really see it evolving. And so maybe if you look at the evolution of B2B marketing over the last 20 years, how did we arrive here at where we are today with that account-based marketing? So what was the start of your career and what did you see evolving?
I mean, the things are changing so quickly. So I'm not sure if I'm going to cover the 20 years, although of course my career is even longer, but let's not go down that road.
No,
So
let's not.
I think it's interesting to see is that, even today, a lot of marketing, the way that a lot of companies are marketing is kind of very transactional, right? So you have, I don't know, some lead gen ads, right? You're driving traffic to a landing page, trying to capture the leads, sending those leads to sales. Or maybe you're doing some sort of, I know, webinar or ebook or something. And so you're generating so-called MQLs, marketing qualified leads, which really are just people who wanted to consume that content. And then again, either you're sending them to sales directly or you're nurturing them, quote unquote, with like, I don't know, 5-step email sequence. But the problem with this approach is that the majority of your market is not ready to buy. They're not buying it. And somebody downloading an ebook, joining a webinar, it's not a buying intent. It just means that they wanted to learn something, right?
Yeah.
And sending them to sales makes no sense. It just doesn't work. Like this is a broken playbook. And the reason why this playbook is broken is because the buyers have evolved, right? Marketing hasn't evolved as much as the buyers have. And if you look at the typical buyer journey, it's going to consist of a lot of different steps. It's going to consist of a lot of people, a lot of discussions, a lot of back and forth. Majority of research might have already been done before they are reaching out to you and talking to your salespeople. And so the question becomes, okay, what kind of marketing? How should I change my marketing so that it is matching this new B2B buyer reality? Or in other words, how to sell the way that your modern buyers are buying?
Yeah, yeah. And if you look at the entire evolution, the challenge with complex sales, of course, as I said, you have a lot of different stakeholders, and it's definitely more than downloading the webinar, downloading the ebook, or listening to the webinar. Maybe it's even an intern that is downloading this content. So there are a whole lot of different things. And then when you build that strategy to reach out to a specific account, there are also multiple layers of the stakeholders, going from the C level, going from the operational operators. How do you build up then the narrative across these different layers and on the vertical side? And how would you do it then on the longer term? And because, as you said, it's not something that you will close tomorrow. How will you build this up then?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And it's a hard question. It's not something that there is a simple answer to it. So if you just take a step back, so the first thing, I mean, how do you build a narrative for the target accounts? How do you build a narrative for the different buyers? Well, it all starts with understanding who your ideal customer is, who your ideal let's break it down, because like a lot of people talk about, ideal customer profile, and then we are not talking about personas, we are not talking about demographics, we are not talking about
Yeah.
things that are typical for B2C marketing,
Yeah.
right? What we are talking about is, first of all, let's call it the ideal account profile. So very precisely, what are the target segments that actually resonate with you, where you have the best customers, where you have the best, let's say, the best case studies, where you have a good fit, where you maybe have an advantage that you might not have as much in the other segments. Maybe there is more competition, maybe some specific niche segments or the features, whatever. So there's a lot of things to consider when even just choosing your target segments. And this is something that a lot of marketers miss.
Yeah.
So a lot of marketers just want to, typically they will run some ads and they will say title, bunch of industries, geographies, Western Europe, maybe it will be, that might be a little bit more precise. And then just a very wide sizes, like, okay, so we're going to target all the production managers in all the different manufacturing, verticals and industries, actually, because these are like industries with verticals. And companies from 100 to 10,000, right? Makes zero sense.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about being able to identify. Let's say you take one market. You're in Belgium, right? So you take Belgium and you say, okay, how can I be able to nail down a list of maybe 20 target accounts? Like I want to have as much clarity about what makes one account a better fit than the other. And so we usually, the way that we work, like very practically, of course, you're analyzing, you're doing your revenue analysis, you're doing the existing customers, your key accounts, and trying to figure that out. And at the end, you should come up with something like 15, 20, 30 detailed criteria to map those accounts. And to kind of wrap this up, maybe just with an example, like we worked with a company that was like with a client that uh, had a bunch of industries. So they had like some sort of technology service provider, and they had a bunch of industries they could work with. We decided, okay, let's focus on the advertising technology space. Okay, it's a very narrow space. And then we were looking at like, why do customers actually choose to work with you? Why don't they choose the competitors? And we realized that a lot of customers a lot of their best customers from this segment actually chose them because of their specific expertise in mobile SDK, whatever that is, right? But it was such an important criterion, because now we could build a very narrow list. We actually ended up with 11 accounts. 11 accounts. They, of course, these are big accounts. So we were talking about maybe 150 potential buyers in there in the buying committee, right? And they were working on those accounts for approximately 6 months. And they managed to land opportunities with 9 out of 11 of those accounts. Wow. And actually close three of them, right? And we're talking about like pipeline was more than 5 million, and the deal value as well was I think more than 2 million, right? So these were big accounts. I think the ACV was around 700K. So, but just because, and why could they close it? Like, how could they have these results? Not because, of course, they did things in the right way and they did the marketing, etc. But first, it was just understanding what an ideal account is. So talking about the narrative and coming back to your question is like, of course, now if I know that these are my target accounts, for example, I need to be talking about this mobile SDK, just as an example, right? And of course, like, my narrative is going to be much different now that I know I'm talking to these, like the ed tech space, and what they need. They're going to use the different terminology. Going to have different, goals. They have, like, they're using technology for very different goals than, let's say some manufacturer, right? Yeah. So that's like the first step. And of course, like in B2B, like you mentioned, it's not just about the accounts and the ideal account profile, but also the buying committee. Who are your buyers, right? And now, when it comes to the buyers and building the narrative around that, I think what is really important is two things, understanding two things. First, understanding the buyer journey, and also understanding their purchase criteria, right? Understanding like why and how they're buying a product like yours. And the only way you can do that, of course, you have already some information. You have, your salespeople are. So that's the first thing that marketers need to learn is how to talk to salespeople, how to analyze the deals, how to analyze the revenue, how to analyze the, let's say, won and lost deals, and how to extract that information from sales. And but that's not enough, because whatever your salespeople and the experience and the marketing data that you might have and the analytics and the CRM, etc., it's only going to tell you a part of the story. And the other part of the story, the only way you can find out is with customer research. And there's no other better way to do customer research than to actually call up and talk to your best customers. So how do you build a narrative? That was the first step. Understand who your best customers are, and then understand how they're buying and why they're buying from you, what their purchase criteria are, what their objections are, first by talking to sales, and then by actually picking up the phone, calling the customers, having in-depth customer interviews, asking a bunch of questions and understanding that.
Yeah, and if you look then at the reality, because I know it happens in a number of companies. At the same time, if you look at other companies, they assign accounts to key account managers. They say, for example, these are your 15 key accounts, start working on them and close them for whatever reason. But these may be part of the top 50, top 150 companies in country. How do you challenge this strategy, and how you adjust the strategy to an ABM approach?
Yeah. Look, I mean, you first need to get a buy-in. Like, I mean, you there's only so much you can do. Like if you don't have the environment, the context, you need to set yourself up for success, right?
Yeah,
So you
definitely.
definitely need to create that buy-in first.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to create the buy-in, usually the way that we do that is, well, we first have to sit down together, discuss whomever we need to get a buy-in from. We need to get a buy-in from the executive team. We need to get a buy-in maybe from sales team if you're in marketing, and of course the marketers themselves. But so first we need to to agree on what a success looks like. Like what are really our objectives? What are our really goals, right? And our goals may be, we want to whatever revenue targets and the growth targets that we might have, and maybe more specific, I don't know, we want to enter this new segment, or maybe we want to geography, whatever the specific goals are. And what, actually we analyze the revenue and we figure out that most of our revenue, or let's say more than half of our revenue comes from enterprise accounts, and actually all our marketing is just SMB. So we are doing nothing to proactively go after those enterprises. So we need to focus on that, right? Okay, so this is like really aligning very specifically what are the goals. Okay, so maybe the goals are, going after the enterprise segment, and then maybe in addition we also realize that out of these enterprise accounts, we have only expanded our deals in, a small, like there's a much more opportunity to expand deals. We haven't done this, right? That is the first part, right? So we need to be very clear on the second thing we need to be kind of agree and have an alignment on is like, okay, but what are the challenges? What is like preventing us to get there? And both in terms of like maybe internal skills, resources, like of content, whatever, like we might think that is, but also kind of like what are the bottlenecks in our funnel, right? Where do we lose? Where are the friction points? Where do we, are we like talking about enterprise? How are we positioning ourselves? Are we positioning ourselves in the correct way for these enterprise customers, right? Do we understand who they are? Do we understand their buying process? Do we understand their buying committee? In most cases, we don't. Actually. Okay, so we agree that this is a challenge. So we agree that we need to do something about it. This becomes a priority, right? And so that's the first step. And the next step also, like, okay, so Now you understand what the goals are and what the challenges are. Now you have some ideas for solutions. But the problem is that a lot of marketers, the way that they present those solutions, let's say, I want to do ABM marketing. Why? Well, because, I basically I heard this great webinar, read about it, and people are getting great results. But what is that? Well, it's, we are going to build a list of accounts, and they're going to run some ads on those accounts. And, it's like people don't really know how to present this. They don't know how to get a buy-in. So if you want to present an initiative, first, like, you need to get an agreement on the goal. So this has to be very linked to these goals. So you need to be able to connect the dots. How are these activities? Well, first of all, what is it? Like, everybody has a different understanding of account-based marketing. What do you actually mean by that? Like, what are the concrete things that you will do, right? So normally we talk about, of course, like defining the target accounts. We talk about, let's say, warm up. It's just the word that we use internally, like how are you going to generate demand and awareness in those target accounts, engagement, how are you going to activate, how are you going to move from that engagement and create sales opportunities, how are you going to, like, there's a number of things that you need to have clarity about, like, okay, these are the actions that we are going to run. So we are going to, work with our SDR team to with those accounts, connecting with them on LinkedIn, and we are going to create content and help them, like, and share content. And how are we going to move from there? Okay, we are going to maybe create some specific content hubs for this, that the salespeople can share and get educated, and with some content analytics, and then follow whatever the playbook is, right? So you have to have also clarity on that. But also then you have to have clarity about, okay, but why do you think this will work? Have you ever done this? Like why do we believe this would work? Well, we believe this would work because we have actually done that, and that worked really well. And we see that we are getting a lot of customers and mentioning that they, got first conversations through LinkedIn. That's why we want the LinkedIn. But what we see is that our SDRs are having low response rates. And we know that, from other projects or from other, we know that if we start sharing content and commenting, we're going to get a much higher response rate. I don't know, right? So why, right? But then also, like, you have to also be able to communicate. So, but okay, what are the results that you expect from this, right? What are the realistic results? What do you base that on? Like, you have to have some sort of a forecast. And we know that forecasts are not perfect, right? But you have to be able to convince me, at least like on paper, that this might work. Okay, we're going to connect to those accounts, to those buyers, and we're expecting to generate this many conversations, et cetera, right? And then finally, you also want to be able to say, what do you need? Who will do, like, in other words, you have to show that you know what you're doing, right? What do you need from me? What do you need from sales? Like, what are the steps? When can we expect what? Like, having a really good plan. And also, what I think is really important, and something we can dive into if you want, is also understanding that whatever you say, whatever you present, whatever way you're going to get the buy-in from your executives and maybe your sales, you're still going to have people, I lost the word, that are
disengaged, or that are not really for the change.
that might say, okay, this might work, but they will still be, not suspicious is the word, but they will still be like,
Skeptical.
okay. The only way you can convince them is by showing the result. There's no other way. Like, they're going to still be, maybe they will be open to it. Maybe they will give you a chance, but you will still have to prove it.
Yeah.
And what a lot of marketers do, and the mistakes that they make is, well, not just marketers, but generally B2B companies, they say, okay, let's do it, right? And then they build a list of 1,000 accounts, and then they're thinking about scaling, and they're doing all of these things. And what happens very often is, like, I've seen this over and over again. They run a campaign like that for 6 months, and there's some stuff is happening, but when you really dive into the CRM, there are no sales opportunities. There really is no return on that investment. And that's because they're trying to run before they learn how to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way to address this, and also to get more buy-in, is to say, look, this is our plan. This is what we want to do. But don't worry, we are not going to ask you for a huge budget and a commitment of a full year. What we are going to do first is we're going to do a pilot,
Yeah.
right? So we always say pilot, operationalize, scale. So what is the pilot? The pilot should be, maybe we'll do our pilot like our client did on 11 accounts, on 10 accounts, on depends on the size, and
Yeah.
maybe a bit more if your accounts are smaller, your deals are smaller, but like very limited. We are also not going to ask for the full, like we are going to continue working. We are not going to kill any of the initiatives that are working for us, etc. We just need a pilot team, one SDR, one person from marketing, and maybe one senior person, like let's say an executive sponsor, or let's say a senior sponsor from whichever team, whether it's a sales or whomever is kind of like a sponsor of that internally, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. And we don't need a big budget. We are going to do a lot of stuff maybe manually. We don't need special technology for this. You don't need it actually. It's crazy to immediately invest in, like, because these ABM tools can get pretty costly pretty quickly, and just investing before even knowing, like, a tool with a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? So you need
Yeah.
a
True.
process first, process before tools and technology, right? So you need to figure out what works, what doesn't work, right? And you say also, like, in time, it's scope down, it's one geography, one vertical, 10 accounts, one marketer, one let's say SDR, and we are going to focus, let's say, on also, like, stack the odds in your favor. Why do we think these accounts are maybe potentially in the market? Do we have some data about it? Do we have some engagement? Are they engaging with our marketing so far? Did we like have conversations with them? Do we have other data that may indicate that they're, not only a good fit, but also actually maybe searching actively, or of course, and there's no data out there that will be guaranteed that they're buying, because if that data was out there, then everybody else has it, and then you're still fucking screwed. So that's not okay.
Yeah.
You still need to. There is still a lot of open questions about that, and you still need to be patient. Now, having said that, that also means that for that pilot campaign, you cannot measure this by revenue, because it's too, like, if it's a pilot campaign of a quarter maybe, or the first, like, stage is like, let's say, 1 quarter. Well, you're not going to, I mean, if you get a real opportunity within a quarter, it may happen, but it may not happen. But what you want to have some leading indicators, and you want to agree upfront that these are the leading. And so if I'm now generating conversations with the right type of buyers at the right accounts, if they actually have a need, maybe the timing is a little bit off, but they are also interested to learn more about my product, things like that, you can use as leading indicators to understand that we are going in the right direction. Should we, like, basically to get more buy-in to continue on that and move on. But it still won't work if you don't have somewhere a buy-in from people who understand. It's not a quick win. There's no silver bullets in enterprise marketing and sales. Whatever you do, you cannot, like, make the account move through the buyer journey much quicker. Maybe you can accelerate it a little bit, but you're not gonna take your, let's say, 9 months sales cycle and reduce it to 1 quarter. I mean, no way.
Yeah, true. And then what you said earlier, it's about, of course, who will do what is the collaboration, and then if you look then at a day-to-day collaboration between sales and marketing, how would this look like to approach this client? I mean, let's say, okay, the first engagements have been done by the SDRs, the research has been done by with the help of the tools of marketing, and then how does the day-to-day relationship, let us say, during that pilot work between sales and marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question, and it's very practical as well, because, I mean, first, kind of like on a high level, like, what is kind of the roles, and how do we break it down? So if you think about it, the role of marketing, so let's forget it for a moment, the strategy. Let's imagine the strategy is done, like you say, day to day. So role of marketing is to generate awareness and drive demand. What does it mean? To make the target accounts aware that we exist, what we are all about, why are we essentially how we are different and why we are worth buying, essentially, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, that's the awareness. Then, and the awareness can be, you can be generating awareness with different kinds of activities. Like I said, like maybe sharing some content on LinkedIn and like working with the SDR, making sure that the actual target accounts are seeing that content. Maybe you're running some small events. Maybe you're, I don't know, like running a local, if it's like a very local market, you're maybe running some local events exclusive for those accounts and that market. Maybe you're running, we ran also kind of like market research on that, whatever, like you have different. I mean, we had clients who were very successful by inviting those buyers on their podcast. Like there are different ways in which you can start engaging those accounts, and you're creating awareness, and you're still not driving demand. To drive the demand, you have to start talking about your solution. You cannot drive demand for a solution if they're not aware of the solution, the benefits, and how that solution can help them. And so there are different ways in which you can do that. I mean, one thing that works really well are case studies, like having good, and I'm not talking about like a 2-pager like everybody has, and you see it and you just know that it's just like very self-promotional. You can already guess how there was a problem and there was a solution, and it's just about our solution really, and that's pretty much it. But just put yourself in the shoes of the buyer. So if I'm considering, like, what are the kind of questions that I might have? Well, I might have questions about, okay, first of all, what was the situation? Is this a similar situation that I have right now? Like, okay, so they implemented a solution, but what does it mean? Like, who was involved? How much support did they get from you? Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, wow.
It's fine. Everything is fine on my side.
I'm getting a call and it's like ringing like crazy here. Let me just turn this
No
off. I'm
worries.
sorry about this. I'm just gonna, and on my WhatsApp, like somebody's calling me there, and I'm just gonna shut it off for a moment. Okay. So, um, where was I?
You on the triggers that somebody would have, and that
Oh yeah,
it's
yeah. So we were talking about case studies. So, look, what kind of questions I might have as a buyer? So I might have questions about, okay, so how did the implementation, like what was required of, or what will be required of me and my team? Who would I need? Do I have the skills? Do I have the right people? How much help would you train me? How do you onboard? What about migration? Like a lot of questions. So if you want to create a good case study, you should basically answer that question and really tell a real story behind the scenes of the full implementation. Of course,
Mhm.
what kind of results, when were they getting results, something that I can really believe in, by the way, etc. So case studies can work really well, especially because in account-based marketing and you're focused on the pilot and it's like one vertical and you have a case study, and of course you're choosing a vertical where you have a good case study, so you can be using like that. So for example, create some sort of a content hub where you put a case study and some information about your product, addressing the objections, etc. Help sales like share that with the buyers, right? Maybe you are doing sharing that also, maybe you're running that webinar or event or something, and then sharing that as a follow-up, all of these things. So this is how you're going to help them generate the demand. And then basically what you are creating, you're creating a pool of engaged accounts, right? So you're
Mhm.
creating like uh, those buyers engaging, they're maybe engaging with the content, visiting, coming to these events, etc., etc. Maybe diving into those case studies. You have some analytics about that. Also visiting maybe your website, etc. So normally there you need some data, right? And then and that's the point when you normally start working with the business development. You're not working with AIs,
Ease. Yeah.
IAEs, account executives. You're working with SDRs normally or BDRs in that to move that engagement into conversation. Now, if you have been working, for example, LinkedIn, that's a little bit easier. You can easily move from a comment to a DM and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and you can help them with some materials and all of these things so they can share out, and but um, don't need to do it like that. I mean, again, you can let's say they're engaging and you're seeing on the website. Obviously, you have email, you have LinkedIn. Sometimes what marketing can help really a lot is direct mail. That works great. Like if you already know these were pre-selected accounts, there was some data about it. Now they're like engaging, they're reading your case study or whatever, and maybe they're chatting with your sales reps. And yeah, you might, for example, send them, personalized parcel, maybe a nice little thoughtful gift without making it into something expensive, with a letter of actually like everything we know about the account and why we think this would be a solution. So instead of pitching generic, like we do on our website and our landing page, some generic pain points, we are actually presenting to that specific account. That's account-based marketing. You're basically personalizing your value proposition and your messaging to that specific account, obviously vertical account, all of these things. So there's a lot that the marketing can help, and you just have to day to day also be reviewing this. You have to have regular meetings, reviewing. But like during the pilot, if you're one person from sales, one from marketing, you should be like working almost daily together, reviewing what's going on. They should know exactly what are the actions that you're taking. They should know what is expected from them. You as a marketer, of course, you want to know like what are the kind of responses that they're getting, if they're getting deeper into an account, what kind of questions they're getting. Can you help them with that? So really, really close collaboration, especially the first time you're doing this. You want to be there as much as possible to understand as much as possible, because then later on, okay, maybe you're going to decide, okay, I'm going to create specific content about this. Maybe we can turn that into a process, but that's only in the later stage after the pilot. That's in the operationalization stage, where you are, okay, how can we turn this one-off success into an evergreen process? What we need, the playbooks, what scripts did we use, how did we build these accounts, what worked, what didn't work, how did we warm them up, what data did we use, right? How did sales then reach out to them? What happened then? What was the feedback? Then we spoke to them and figure out it wasn't a good fit. Well, maybe we need to update our qualification criteria, right? So these are the kind of things that when you're moving from the pilot into operationalization, and you want to do that before scaling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Vladimir, when your gates are open, you don't stop talking. I think we can really keep on talking for a couple of hours. So we promise each other to keep this short. So I actually would like to stop here and ask 3 questions I ask everybody from my audience. So first of all, so you have a lot of experience in marketing. You're very successful with your company, fullfunnel.io. If you look back and your journey till now, what do you wish you would have done differently?
I think that what I wish I had, or like if I could speak to, let's say, a younger version of myself, right? What would I tell him? I think one of the things that I would tell to myself would be, there are no quick fixes, right? There's like, forget about any quick fix, any, the green is always the grass is always greener on the other side. Everything seems like,
True.
So there is, the only way in which you can win in B2B marketing is by doing the foundation right and by doing the full puzzle. The reason why most programs fail is not because they don't use the latest channel, they don't have the latest tech, or they don't master maybe that channel. It's usually more about the foundations, the ICP, the customer research, the messaging, all these things. If you're doing all of them quite good, you're probably top 5%. So focus on that. Another thing maybe that I would say is also, like, in B2B marketing, less is more. Like, usually there's a lot of like focus on volume, scalability, etc. But usually, 20% of your content is actually generating 80% of the interest, and 20% of your accounts are generating 80% maybe of revenue at least, or maybe case studies, referrals, etc. So it's all about figuring out, it's all general in life, but definitely in B2B marketing and sales. Less is more. Search for these high leverage both activities and accounts and content and all these assets that focus on quality, not on the volume.
Yeah, great one. And you're not only a big content creator. You're very active with courses, content on LinkedIn, and so much more. Do you have yourself a podcast or some book that really inspired you and that you can recommend here?
Yeah, I mentioned the 80-20 principle. There is a book, 80-20 principle. In terms of, let's say, I mean, there's a bunch of great people on LinkedIn that you can follow. I've actually learned a lot from my co-founder, Andrej Zinkiewicz, so it's kind of self-promotion, but definitely would follow him. You have great thought leaders on LinkedIn who really get it. Obviously, like everybody in the marketing world will know people like Chris Walker, but you also have great people that are focused on specific things. Like I love, for example, what's her name? You should have asked. You should have told me this. I should have prepared because I know how to find them, but I'll need to look them up.
We can add it in the links after when the episode appears. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, yeah, a couple of people that I would recommend who are not so famous, etc., but have really good content that you can follow.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I can share some links. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. We add it then later in the comments. So then the last one. So when you look at the whole evolution, people change, people pivot at a certain time. What is for you the best moment to pivot, to change direction?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, I mean, it depends, of course, also what you mean by the pivot, right? So there's been a lot of talk, and especially in the startup world, about pivoting and like all the successful companies pivoting. But I don't think this is really true. I think that a lot of companies have maybe adopted like the majority of successful companies haven't really fundamentally pivoted, but I think they focus on doing more of what works. And maybe like stripping down the excess and let's say the excess fat or whatever you like to call it, and really understanding, okay, where we are really good at, what are the things that we should do more of, and even more importantly, what are the things that we should be doing less of. So I would focus on that. Now, of course, there's sometimes big changes, like big changes in the industry. There's sometimes like, okay, we are now going through a big change, with the economic downturn, etc. For some people for some companies that may be pivoting, there's like a lot of technology change. So when there's like fundamental changes where you see like a big opportunity, or you see that you're hitting a dead end, or there is no future, sometimes you do really have to, really pivot. But I think that people should really be thinking less about pivoting and more about what is our 80-20. Where are we really, really good at? What should we do much, much better and more of? And even more importantly, what are the kind of things that we should let go of?
Yeah, that's a great advice. Very, very, very good advice. And with this, I suggest we stop the conversation for now. I'm pretty sure we stay in touch. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, and I'm pretty sure there's so much more to come. Best of luck with the full funnel IO.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.